Hello and welcome to Module 3. This module we're looking at international accounting and the theory and objectives behind it. For international accounting, that really means we're talking about the International Accounting Standards Board and the accounting standards that they produce, which are known as the International Financial Reporting Standards, or IFRS. So in this presentation, I'm going to take you through a very brief history of the IFRS, and you should note that there is ample more material than what I provide in your textbook, and I'm also going to put a couple of documents onto Moodle that will help you get a bit more information about this. So let's just move on to our presentation. Okay, so a brief history of the IFRS. So first of all, we need to think of why would we bother with global standards? Well, the big issue with any accounting standard is it should promote comparability. So where, for instance, Australian standards promote comparability between reporting companies, international standards provide that, plus they offer the ability to compare company statements between one country and another, and even between the same company reporting in both one country and another. So there's a lot of benefit there. Also, we need to be aware of the globalization pressures. So trade is flowing across borders more and more now, but because of the internet, for example, capital is flowing across borders at a more rapid rate than it used to. And even shareholdings are more common internationally. So it's not uncommon now, for instance, for us to be here in Australia and to be able to own shares in New York or London. For companies, one of the big benefits in international financial standards is that it reduces the cost of preparing your financial statements. Before, here in Australia, for instance, before we adopted the international standards, then a company here, such as BHP, for instance, would have to report in one way in Australia, and if they had to report in New York, because they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, they had to restate their earnings and their balance sheet in a different format. So with the international financial statements, the IFRS, a lot of that pressure is taken off companies. So the IASB itself wants to provide one set of high quality standards to be used by companies throughout the world. So they want to be reliable standards and trusted standards, just as if you're using your own country's standards. The objectives behind this is to promote transparency by promoting international comparability and also improving the quality of financial information. The IFRS wants to strengthen accountability by reducing the information gap between the providers of capital and the people to whom they've entrusted their money. In other words, the companies. So that's just a way of saying that investors have access to better information and more trusted information because of the one set of international accounting standards. And also improves economic efficiency by helping investors to identify opportunities and risks around the world. So without the international standards, investors could do this within their own country, but because of the international standards, now they can do that with companies around the world. And so a brief history, as you can see by this statement, it all really started 40 years ago. So 1967, actually, that's 50 years ago, we had the Accountants International Study Group formed. And you might like to note there that that includes the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. So the Americans were there right at the start, but they're not as committed now, as we shall see. 1973, the International Accounting Standards Committee, which is the forerunner of the IASB. And in 2001, the IASB replaced the IASC, and the main difference is that the IASB has much stronger governance procedures and levels. And there's a brief history of the main events that have happened ever since. So Australia has committed since 2005. Japan's on board, the EU is on board, so is China and Russia. By 2007, 100 plus companies required or permitted IFRS for reporting. And currently, 84% of jurisdictions dealing with the IFRS now require IFRS for public companies. The IASB itself employs 150 staff covering 30 different nationalities. So it's not a small back office. This is a very large operation. So, as I said, that's a very, very brief presentation of the history of IFRS and the IASB. And coming up, if you watch the next presentation, we will look at some of the costs and benefits. In other words, the benefits of adopting international accounting standards may be obvious, but there are problems for many different countries. The problem is really with the one-size-fits-all approach. So I'll talk to that more in the next presentation. Okay, bye for now.